So, couple more questions on the 5 points here. Vending machines. British Columbia. Anywhere else in the country?
I'm not sure where else there are marijuana vending machines, but they will soon be illegal.
So we're sitting on a future market of antique machines.
Yeah, those machines will have to be repurposed. But then again, those dispensaries were contravening federal law in the first place. So I'm not sure if law enforcement will grab onto this law. It's really hard to tell how much law enforcement and Crown prosecution will really cling on to these laws and go after them, go after people for them.
Isn't the government itself, the government of Canada, since 2000, guilty of breaking the law regarding the Allard case?
In what sense?
In the sense that we keep fighting the same point over and over again, and it keeps getting cited as something. It was recently used in a case for a wrong reason. And I guess I'll need you to quickly tell everyone what the Allard case is. But basically saying that if the government can't seem to forward some kind of serviceable framework for distribution and consumption, that you can just go ahead and do it.
Right. Well, I will say that there's different constitutional aspects between adult use and medical use. There's been a litany of case law to suggest that medical use is protected and that there can be violations of individuals' security of the person if they are not able to use cannabis. Could you repeat the question? I got lost in my own thoughts there.
Yeah, that's okay. Basically, I was just trying to understand why it is that that folks are. The overarching question is that when there is so much science showing that the stuff is actually helpful, how can the government break its own series of rules regarding the Allard ruling?
Yeah, so the Allard case arose when there were some individuals who took a look at the fact that homegrown would not be permitted, and they said this is going to seriously jeopardize my health. They tried to advance an argument about cost. Eventually, the courts, this was a federal court decision, found that those individuals should still be allowed to grow their cannabis like they were allowed to do under the old system. And so there was a period of time where you could not sign up to be to cultivate your own cannabis, but now you can. They brought back the system ostensibly because of the Allard decision. So the government would argue that they're following the Allard decision because now you can sign up if you have a medical document to grow for yourself.
Yeah.
That's medical, though. So the Allard decision can't really translate too well to the adult use side. And even the use of Allard's a great case. It was a great victory. But some have said that too much stock is being put into it, because they're, with respect to a specific line in the decision that said dispensaries are at the heart of access, because there was some evidence presented in the trial that dispensaries provided reasonable access and provided an alternative to the cultivation and to the system that was already in place. So that's been a line that has been utilized in challenges since then. But we're starting to see that some courts and some commentators are saying, hold on, wait a second, Allard's not the end-all, be-all. But it was an important case, and we do have to give our thanks to John Conroy, the lawyer in that case, for arguing that, because he did a great job.
Okay, quick questions. We're running out of time. I'm really glad you came in. The 4-plant situation. Mm-hmm. What is it right now? Before the laws change, how many plants are you allowed to have?
So right now, before the laws change, you're not allowed to have any plants.
And later you're going to have 4, and you're saying that's a good thing?
I'm saying it's a good thing that people will be allowed to grow 4. I think it's a good thing.
Do you know what the commensurate tables are between what your prescription is and ergo how many plants you need?
So there is a calculator that you can use that determines if you're growing indoor or outdoor, what the government says is the maximum amount of plants you can grow for medical.
Okay,
so it really
is it
depends.
online?
Is it online? Yes, you can Google ACMPR calculator. That'll probably come up just right when you have that. So if you're looking to
ACMPR calculator.
If you use a certain amount of cannabis per day, and you're going to be cultivating, and you sort of know what your yield is like, certainly check up the calculator to see if it matches up with Health Canada, because there's a lot of discrepancy.
Right, a lot of discrepancy.
Yeah, so what you grow might not be what
This
Health
is an
Canada says is what the
inconsistency.
yield should be, right?
There is
It
much
could be
to
above
be
or below, but these are the
considered.
rules
I
that they've
must
set for medical.
reevaluate.
That won't affect medical. What's very interesting now is that there's a possession limit if you're medical that applies no matter if you're public or private. But now, for the adult use, non-medical, you'll be allowed to possess as much as you want at home. So how come the recreational? So I think that's going to be amended so that I'm not sure, but I think that possession limit you have as a medical patient that's tied to your grams per day, that might only apply in public, because if rec users at home can amass a wine cellar, then certainly if you're medically entitled to it, you should be able to have as much as reasonably required.
I read something, and I have to check this up. I don't usually bring this kind of thing to the show, but I read something from 1995. There was a Canadian man in 1995 who had a prescription of some nature, medical. This is, in the 90s, before even the Allard ruling. And he was given a medical prescription for a certain amount of cannabis daily. And I think it was 10 grams a day or something. 10 grams a day. And if you do the work on that, 10 grams a day available to you, you need a lot more than 4 plants.
No. So if you use it medically and you're using a substantial amount, you're not going to be able to rely on that exemption that is in place for recreational cannabis consumers.
So basically, I can grow as much as I can yield out of my 4 plants. I can use that for my cancer. That's no problem.
Well, yes, with the new removal of the 100 centimeter, that was done at the committee. So hopefully that sticks, because that's arbitrary. If you go away for vacation, as someone had suggested, you could become a criminal without even
this is the thing you were saying before, and I say this about using it as a medical substance for yourself to pull yourself out of the problems like I was in and some other people have to experience, to use it in that way, and then to be told this is how much you need. And this is how much you're going to use to get out of that medical situation. And you're allowed to own far less than this. Mm. So now I have to go to an LP, right? At that point. I have to go to a licensed producer to come up with enough. And now we're in a situation where I keep hearing about how there isn't going to be enough licensed producer cannabis available across the country come the deadline of July, whatever it is.
Yeah, I think there's going to be problems with supply. There's also probably going to be problems with variety, because if the Wynne government wants to sell it for $10 a gram, all taxes, and that's doable, but the costs really add up. And so if you're a large-scale producer, you might have a lower cost per gram as your production cost, so you'll afford being able to sell it to the government for $3 or $4. Not all licensed producers will be able to afford that, just because there's going to be a lot of smaller licensed producers. So it'll be very interesting to see how it turns out. But if they're only offering cannabis from 2 or 3 very large companies that sort of what their focus is on lowering their cost or one of their focuses is lowering their cost per gram. It's almost in a sense going to be a race to the bottom. The consumers might not appreciate the quality of the cannabis, and I'm not talking about good manufacturing practices, because it has to be that. But I'm talking about when you look at it, there's a cannabis consumer would look at a bud and just know that. That looks nice. There's something about it. It just glistens.
Mm-hmm.
And that you might not see that with cannabis if there's not a lot of variety.
Yeah. Well, I'm not even so worried about the variety just yet. I'm worried about the fact that what seems to be going on is a bunch of folks who don't know how to build things are telling the builders to get their illegal businesses all packed up and get the hell out of here. We're going to build things now. And we hope we're doing a good job. We're not going to use blueprints. We're not going to use architects' drawings. We're not going to use physics. We're just going to slap a bunch of shit together, see how it does. If you get hurt by that, if it damages your lifestyle, whatever, we'll get to that. We'll figure it out later. We'll sort of chunk it along as it goes. We'll nurse this thing. Can you imagine that kind of mindset going into some of these buildings here or your house or whatever? What is okay with these people who decide, let's take a bunch of hodgepodge stuff, slap it together. We'll take a little bit of something from Colorado, a little bit of something from my puritanical background, a little bit of something from, and cobble together this disaster and then sit there and watch it, and then you'll upset the apple cart, so you'll get busted, and then there'll be a problem. Okay, and then they'll amend it a little bit. Like, why not just sit down and go, this is all great, because there's tons of examples in the real world that stink and aren't working and suck and are clearly retro, and there's other stuff, that some other cool things that people are coming up with, like in Colorado and other places that do seem to work, and they do, like where they do want them to use the dispensary model, which, by the way, the UBC has decided is the most efficient and also the most preferred. So you're issuing democracy as well with that, because most people want to use that.
There's been some great research out of UBC indicating that patients prefer dispensaries. Not all patients, and certainly not all the time, but there are certain aspects of the dispensary experience
that should be there.
That should be there, and that are really helping patients right now.
Yeah. Well, you've helped me, because I've learned a lot more things, and I'm going to ask you back right away.
Okay.
Hopefully you'll come back sometime. We'll figure out when. And I know this is going to be fascinating for you, your career personally, because, you are moving from, like, your articling is going to take about the amount of time until they make this announcement.
Yeah,
something like it's very close.
It'll be around the same point, so it's around the same time, so it's going to be a very exciting time. I love waking up every morning and seeing what is new in the industry, because everything is changing every single day, and it's an exciting time.
Yeah, it is an exciting time. One more question for you. My last two guests were not, they're very helpful, very fantastic people who do great work, but they don't use this stuff, and they promote it knowing scientifically, knowing compassion, knowing all of that. They do it anyway from their positions. We had Agromed, the CEO of Agromed, this American business out of Pennsylvania, very knowledgeable man, and also Paul Flynn from Britain, and they don't use it. So do you use it?
Well,
or are you not allowed to say that?
I would just say that it's very interesting, because there is a marijuana researcher in the U.S. that says, I will not give anyone an answer, because if you say yes, it seems like you're too personally invested in it as a researcher, I guess. If you say no, it'll seem like you're not in touch with the subject matter that you're with. But
yeah, that's bizarre.
So you know what? I'm going to take the same approach.
The same
approach as that researcher. Yeah.
Okay, so this is how I would ask this question that I just asked you in a legalese kind of way. My version of legalese. Okay. Have you, at any given time, either before or after the incident in question, at the time with other people, decided that it was possible to maybe or maybe not use cannabis at such time wherein you may or may not have made the decision to do so? What the hell did I just say? What a lawyer would say. That's what I just said.
Yeah, that does sound very lawyerly. And also that might be a question you get at the border when you're going to the U.S.
Right.
And if you do smoke marijuana and you say you have smoked marijuana, that could be grounds to refuse you, because you've just admitted to
could it also be grounds
substance offense.
Does it hang on the discretion of the guard? Could he say, you did smoke marijuana, but do you do it anymore? And you say no. You go, okay. Like, do they have that still, or as soon as I say yes, I do, they're going to shut the door?
They certainly have discretion, and you usually don't hear about the cases where people get through because they're not going to publicize.
Right.
They're not going to say, I smoked weed and I told this border guard.
Yeah.
So ostensibly there might be some cases where if you mention cannabis, it might not prompt those further questions. But
Well, I don't understand how people tour because I probably won't be able to go to the States. I won't lie to them. I'll say yes. So if they don't Google my name or ask me something, and I go. And if they do, then I won't get
You just
to
heard
go.
about Melissa Etheridge. She was
Melissa
arrested for
Etheridge,
going over the border.
Yeah, and the musician Todd Rundgren. They just left Canada recently, and they were using cannabis. But they're American citizens, so they're going to let them in. They're just going to be arrested.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we're moving along with the progress of this. So anyway, we are Green Crush. I'd like to thank Harrison Jordan for coming on. He will soon be a lawyer at the apex of Canada's turnaround from the crazy, nutty, repressive, unscientific laws regarding cannabis we have now to the crazy, repressive, unscientific laws we're going to have come next year. Harrison Jordan, thanks for coming on the show. This is Green Crush. And just before we go, folks, there's one particular thing I want to tease you with, because next week we're going to spend some time on the opioid crisis and try to get to the bottom of that. Here it is from the New York Times, May 11th, 2017. It's kind of really over now, the question of what to do about the opioid crisis. Here's what you do. You arrest all of the CEOs in the companies that are providing the opioids. Isn't that simple? Here it is from the New York Times. Narcotic maker guilty of deceit over marketing. From Virginia, back in May 10th, the company that makes the painkiller OxyContin, hillbilly heroin, the same thing Rush Limbaugh went down for, this terrible opioid that's killing people and fattening wallets everywhere. And 3 of its current and former executives pleaded guilty in federal court to criminal charges that they had misled doctors and patients when it claimed the drug was less likely to be abused than traditional narcotics. 2001, there's this doctor there from a particular pharmaceutical company in front of Congress telling everyone there, who even bothered to ask questions back in 2001. I don't think they do that now. And they're asking him all about, well, is this going to be a problem for people? And he's absolutely assuring them it's not going to be any kind of problem at all. And these guys will continue to roll and make tons of money. So just understand that there is a controlled opposition going on right now. You're not supposed to know about the old facts or the new facts. Scientifically speaking of cannabis, they gloss over them when they create repressive laws to put us away. And they let people manufacture things and profit greatly from the deaths of probably hundreds of thousands of people by now, if not more, for propagating a poison while they tell us how terrible this 5,000-year-old medicine is. Anyway, folks, that's what I would call an inconsistency beyond...
This is an inconsistency.
Yeah.
There is much to be considered.
And we'll do that next week on Green Crush. Thanks for joining us. It's been a lot of fun. It was quite nice having you in the studio. Sorry I had to run away there for a bit, but that is the way it goes sometime on a live show. Green Crush. We'll be back next Tuesday at 2:03. And we're always a little bit late.